The Felden arc was probably the least memorable major arc in Songs of War, so we'll take a closer look at it to see how we could improve it and make it less forgettable. If you've not seen Songs of War by squaredmedia, please do so before watching this video. It is the most underrated Minecraft animation I've ever seen, with incredible visuals, voice acting, music, and an original fantasy story. However, like any piece of media, this show isn't without its faults, especially when it comes to the writing. These rewrites are all fan-made, and I'd like to give a huge thank you to the other writers, JesusAlex and GetScribbled, who do a ton of work behind the scenes. It's not just me making these happen, and Alex especially deserves so much more credit than he's been getting. We also have some amazing renderers to shout out for this one: TheSnakeAnimator, Detective Chronos, Meowsomnia-Singer, and Legit Alex. Alright, there will be spoilers for all seasons of Songs of War past this point, as well as our other fan rewrites. You guys know the drill by now. So, let's get straight into how we would fix the Felden arc. The Necromancers have slowly been building their forces and are officially at war with Felden, and Episode 1 opens at the siege of Forsook. Here, we'll introduce new Necromancer abilities and lore to make this fight slightly more fun. Throughout Season 2, they gain more diverse and dangerous undead to control: drowned, skeleton and zombie horses, wraiths from Minecraft dungeons, and they'll even reanimate a few ancient Jagathan skeletons. These are undead that Withers have never controlled before, so the Necromancers are a huge anomaly, and the first to do so in the history of Ardonia. They experiment with new powers, and it takes a valuable resource to actually use any of them: a Wither skeleton skull. Without Wither skulls, they can't do much. These skulls can create explosions of black smoke when smashed on the ground, shoot out torrents of this smoke by blowing air through it, and they can be ignited in white wither flames to throw like a Molotov cocktail. They can also wither plant life by turning them dark gray and draining their life, and through the skull, transfer that life force to the holder. This is a very slow process though, and leaves the holder exposed. Other things skulls can do include eroding and slightly speeding up the rusting of metals, disorienting people with miasma and smoke to lose their 5 senses, and create small illusions with smoke constructs. The reason they wouldn't use any of these in Season 1 is because they take a rare object to use, and each Wither Skull can only be used to do one of these things before it's rendered useless. So the Necromancers save these skulls for their larger battles. Felden loses Forsook. However, we're making a big change to the ending of Episode 1. Nika doesn't sneak in by herself and get indoctrinated, because that was a stupid move on her part, and Dark Nika contributed nothing to the plot. Instead, the episode ends with some Necromancers delivering word to their leader, like, "My lord, we've found it." Lucan and Nika are with the Felden armies, and we get to explore more of Lucan and Kiyoshi's dynamic. Kiyoshi and Lucan were childhood friends who simply went down different paths as they grew older. Script Kiyoshi is one of the better written characters, so we aren't changing much about him. We're just adding more depth to his and Lucan's disagreements. We won't be talking much about Kiyoshi's inner conflict since the script actually does a decent job with him. Back to the rewrite, Lucan is a petty thief, so he has decent knowledge of the criminal side of Felden, and his dirty street tactics are a direct contrast to Kiyoshi's formal military ways of fighting and planning. Kiyoshi is tired of Lucan's antics, so at some point, he and Nika just sneak off to do their own thing and get to the bottom of the Necrolord's plan without Kiyoshi and the military slowing them down. Kiyoshi, of course, doesn't know what they're doing and sends forces after them for desertion, a very serious crime during war. Now that Lucan isn't being watched like a hawk by the military, he contacts some old acquaintances, like smugglers and thieves, to help them out. These guys are good at sneaking around, stealing, and gathering information in the shadows. Lucan and Nika get directions and advice, and he even gets in contact with the higher-up connection in the Unyielding Legion. And this is a stark contrast to all his other petty thief contacts who stay out of the Legion's way, because they're the real deal, not just petty thieves. The Legion is full of actual assassins and high-ranking criminals. Basically, even if you're a fellow lawbreaker, you don't mess with the Legion. Lucan was never in the Legion himself. Lucan just has maxed out charisma, and it came in handy. He met his Legion connection at a bar, and they simply got along too well. Nika's like, "How do you even know these people?" And Lucan just says casually, "Oh, we met at a bar once." Zarya learns of Lucan and Nika's side quest, and convinces the Necrolord to let him personally hunt them down since he's dealt with Nika before. Necrolord, however, hardly even knows who she is. In Season 1, all he knew was some girl caused Zarya trouble and they weren't able to kill her. Necrolord has no vendetta against Nika. He's completely indifferent to her existence. Despite that, he allows Zarya to chase after her because he has bigger plans of his own. Zarya's backstory is really interesting, so I'll give you the basic rundown for a second here. He started as a nobody in a small, nameless town outside of Felden or any jurisdiction of the kingdoms. His town was attacked, and Felden refused to help, so he was captured and enslaved by the Nether, like his fellow townsfolk. This also expands the Nether lore. During Pythos' reign, he launched periodic raids on worthless small towns that the kingdoms wouldn't care about if they were suddenly wiped off the map. This is how Pythos got resources and slaves for his kingdom. And yes, Nether slaves were briefly mentioned in the original script, so all we're doing is expanding on this concept. Zarya absolutely hates the Nether for this. And one day, Zonvoltaris was in a more remote corner of the Nether gathering wither skulls and freed some of these slaves. Necrolord offered them to join his cause, where they would be housed and fed and promised them glory, or to run off and return to their worthless lives as nobodies. Zarya joined him and became one of the first necromancers, and idolizes Zon for freeing him from slavery. Since they use wither skulls, Zarya derives immense joy from being able to disrespect on relics from the thing he hates most, the Nether. He also has a disdain of Felden for abandoning his village and doing nothing to save them, but his hatred of the Nether trumps Felden by a long shot. The cliffhanger ending of episode 2 would be hundreds of necromancers and undead dragging a massive body out of a lake with chains in an unknown location in Ardonia. Those of you who watched the Ender Arc rewrite know where this is going, but the protagonists have no idea yet. Mitsuki the Chronicler is sent to Felden to record the Necromancer War, and Alec escorts her for the time being since Lucan is nowhere to be found. During Lucan and Nika's time alone, she finally reveals more about her story and why she's hunting the Necromancers in the first place. An idea from the old draft doc says Nika had a boyfriend who was killed by the Necromancers, so we expanded on this. He was a Felden agent who investigated them first, and Nika kept telling him to stop, believing there was no such thing. He kept digging until he uncovered something he shouldn't have, and Zarya killed him while Nika watched, hidden and powerless to save him. Nika has worked alone ever since, due to the trauma of not wanting to be attached to anyone and losing them all over again. She continues the investigation and wants to destroy the Necromancers herself. When Lucan learns of her past love, he immediately gets jealous of this dead guy, and it causes a bit of a petty rift in their relationship. He was a Felina playboy in the past. This line implied it pretty clearly.
Which night are we talking about? I get my Felina girls mixed up.
And Nika would have found out about this during their time in the criminal side of Felden. Nika would be decently upset learning about this part of him she was never aware of. And now Lucan has to actually work to gain back her trust, making sure she knows he's not just there for her looks at the end of the day. Lucan and Nika find a whole bunch of necromancer tunnels in their side quest and a bunch of other misleading, contradictory clues. It would take an episode and a half of stalking for it to click in Nika's head what they're doing. Her fears confirmed when they see necromancers carrying back the body of a dragon from the Great War. They both know exactly what this means, and it's now less of a mystery what they're doing. It's a matter of preventing it before it happens. Meanwhile, Kiyoshi travels to the other kingdoms to find recruits to fight the necromancers. Felden is not doing very well and they need support, so there's a montage of him beaconing around for help. He tries recruiting other captains and generals, like Roman from Northwind, and the Sidonian rhino-riding captain who we named Ahmed. No one joins him though, until finally he goes to Yujiki. This is inspired by some folks in the squaredmedia Discord server. Yujiki and Kiyoshi are in love. They just never had the time to be together and put their kingdoms above their personal wants. There aren't many good couples in Songs of War, so even just one scene of these two and showing their relationship for a few minutes can help. She sends some troops back with him. However, chaos ensues in Felden while the captain is gone. Lucan and Nika are caught and surrounded by the Felden soldiers at the Mahoa docks, where they try explaining what they saw, but Alec confronts them for desertion and questions their loyalty to Felden. In the middle of this interrogation, the necromancers strike the port, and Lucan and Nika are caught up in one of the largest battles so far, the Battle of Mahoa Docks. The necromancers knew the captain was gone and took the opportunity to attack. A single, small dark oak ship with black and gray sails arrives from the west, but that was far from their whole army. Beneath the waters, a massive horde of drowned follow behind the ship unbeknownst to the Felden fleet. Two trapdoors of the ship open and swarms of wraiths and phantoms fly out as the Felden forces open fire. Okay, there wasn't a single naval battle in the script, so we thought it'd be cool to add one here. The horde of drowned split into two as the majority of them get to the docks and attack, while the remaining undead climb into the Felden fleet ships to board them. Lucan and Nika are stuck in the middle of all the fighting, and the fleet is sunk, and the boats in the docks are burned. The soldiers have no choice but to retreat into the jungle, and there, Lucan and Nika get lost among the crowd and separated. The necromancers pull a pincer move on the retreating army as another force of undead led by Zarya appear from the jungles, massacring them, and Zarya finally captures Nika in the chaos. The battle ends in a major loss for Felden. Their entire fleet is destroyed, and the necromancers now have a direct route to attack the capital. Rather than doing the mature thing and reporting to Alec what the necromancers' plans are, Lucan runs after Nika to save her. Because he's a simp. We never said he was smart. Nika is taken to Mount Tempest, where Zarya brings her before the Necrolord, who hasn't been present in the war since the Forsook siege. He's been slaving away, performing rituals on the dead dragon's body ever since he got his hands on it, relentlessly attempting to revive it. I'll also expand on the Necrolord's character real quick. He was a stray Voltaris loner during the war named Zon, a quiet kid with genius levels of intelligence. He has a massive vendetta against Kyoshi's family since his grandfather, Yokoshi, utterly annihilated the Voltaris in Felden in the First Great War. Yokoshi is his name in the upcoming Songs of War What If, so we're using it too. Zon witnessed all his brothers in arms die, and in his desperate retreat, he saw Withers control a massive army of undead that pushed Yokoshi and his army back. This battle leaves a huge impression on young Zon, and it's kinda like the Vietnam of the Nether Voltaris Alliance in the First Great War. Over the years, Zon grew obsessed with necromancy, formed the Necromancer faction, and traveled to the Nether somewhat frequently for years retrieving Wither skulls. Zon is psychotic, yet calculated and patient, hyper-fixated on the undead, and specifically his mission of creating an undead dragon. Nika is brought before the Necrolord, and they have a tense conversation. Nika's under the impression she's actually slowed down the Necromancers all these years, and sees the Necrolord and Zarya as her greatest rivals. Necrolord completely flips her perspective, putting Nika in her place by basically saying,
"I don't even know who you are."
Her efforts were nothing in comparison to his ambitious plans, and made her feel like her life's purpose of destroying the Necromancers was in vain, as she accomplished nothing in the grand scheme of things. So he basically just says,
"I would even keep you as a slave in my empire!"
This really takes a toll on Nika. She's so irrelevant to the Necrolord that he doesn't even care to learn her name after she devoted years to oppose him. The Necrolord just leaves, cause he's got more important things to do. And Nika's saved by Lucan, who used an invisibility potion from his contact in the Legion. Nika thought no one was stupid enough to go after her, but Lucan has proved his views have changed. He's there to save her because he genuinely has feelings for her and proves it through this rescue. They beat the Necromancers guarding them and run away from the enemy base. And it's now that Zon's intense ritual finally succeeds. Only at the tail end of the Necromancer War does Zon finally achieve his goal of reanimating a dragon's corpse, and the dramatic cliffhanger ending of episode 7 would be a close-up shot of the undead dragon opening its bright white eyes. For those of you who haven't seen the Ender Arc rewrite, there are a plethora of reasons to add an undead dragon, including connecting Felden to the Ender Arc and giving the Necromancers an ace up their sleeve. We have a small section dedicated to explaining the undead dragon in a bit more detail in the Ender Arc video, so if you're not fully convinced, I'd recommend skipping to that part to hear the argumentative essay about our boy. The Necrolord commands the dragon with his Necrostaff and changes plans from attacking Ferndale and finishing off the Felden army to straight up attacking the capital city and winning the war by default. Necrolord sent a token force to Ferndale to make the army believe that's where the attack would take place, but it's Lucan and Nika who informed them of the Necrolord's true intentions. They specifically found Alec first and convinced him to tell Kyoshi, mainly so they don't get arrested. Alec runs with them to tell Kyoshi, and when they say the Necromancers have a dragon of their own, the room is plagued by shocked gasps and terrified looks. And Kyoshi has to rally the troops anyway, saying that, dragon or not, they have a duty to fulfill. The Necrolord is at his peak of power here and uses his mastery in dark magic and necromancy to create a massive sheet of dark clouds above the entire kingdom of Felden, covering the sun and allowing his army to fight unimpeded. Lucan and Nika watch this happen, and it is the strongest display of magic in the series yet, making Rewrite Necrolord one of the top dogs in Ardonia. Zon comes across Kyoshi and Flora, and in their confrontation, the audience would learn the extent of his hatred for Yokoshi, who Kyoshi is a spitting image of, only far weaker. Necrolord challenges Kyoshi to an honorable one-on-one duel without the undead dragon interfering, instead ordering the abomination to go rampant on the city, for he wants to end Yokoshi's descendant himself. Zon craves vengeance for the horrors he suffered during the Great War, and reveals Yokoshi's strength to Kyoshi, even stating that he saw him fight and kill a Wither all on his own without any help. Yokoshi was one of the strongest Felinas in history, and he expresses his sheer disappointment at Kyoshi's weakness in comparison to his ancestor. This only furthers Kyoshi's struggles grappling with his role as captain and his family legacy, the same conflicts he faces in the script. As they fight in the burning city, Zon continues insulting the captain. Kyoshi forces himself to fight on despite his doubts, since at the end of the day, he's the captain of Felden and his people's last hope, so he fights even harder and does extremely well. Kyoshi is indeed strong enough to match Zon's power, and the two have an insanely close duel, until, all of a sudden, Kyoshi gets the upper hand and is about to kill the Necrolord when Zon fires a song at the captain. which he dodges pretty flawlessly, yet he looks at the Necrolord with sheer horror at the realization of what just happened. In that moment, Kiyoshi asks a simple yet impactful question, since this would be the first time the audience learns of this.
You're an Ardonia.
Just as Kiyoshi says this, a few embers from the fires around them land on Zahn's robes and partially burn them away as he takes off his mask and reveals his identity as Voltaris, to both the audience and the poor captain. Zahn reveals his name and sees the fear in Kiyoshi's eyes, granting him the confidence to laugh out loud, mocking the captain. Kiyoshi has to continue fighting, yet the fear has already been implanted in him. The tragedy lies in Kiyoshi's mind, as his fear is what gives the Necrolord power over him, thus granting him the upper hand. Kiyoshi finally breaks under the immense pressure and stress he's feeling, and as they continue to fight, Kiyoshi begins to second-guess himself and hesitates to attack, as his confidence has shattered, believing he would never be able to kill an Ardonia. Zahn uses a Saporium that he specifically chose to weaken Felina's and uses it against Kiyoshi, one we've named Sapporo-Dull. This song dulls an opponent's instincts and senses, taking away Kiyoshi's upper hand with his naturally heightened senses and reflexes. This, combined with Kiyoshi's broken mentality, was all that prevented him from ending the Necrolord. And what's even more tragic is that Kiyoshi was strong enough to kill Zahn. After a lackluster performance from Kiyoshi after discovering the Necrolord's true identity, Zahn finally strikes Kiyoshi down, and he dies a meaningless death, overlooking the destruction of his kingdom, knowing he failed everything and everyone he ever fought for. His kingdom, his people, his soldiers, and his family's legacy. Kiyoshi's death is a tragedy because of its meaninglessness, only further proving Zahn's point, and dooming the kingdom of Felden as well as its people. The Necrolord kills the Felden officials and sees a certain little chronicler standing to the side recording everything with absolute fear in her eyes, almost tearing up. She's heartbroken seeing it all unfold, and Zahn walks up and asks what she thinks she's doing. Nitsuki says, "My job, sir? I'm a chronicler of Northwind. I was sent here to—" And Necrolord interrupts flatly, saying he knows what a chronicler is. He's baffled at Northwind being so bold to send one of their own to interfere in his war. Nitsuki says chroniclers are neutral, and she's just there to record. But Zahn doesn't care and yanks her notebook away, glading over the pages and throws it into a fire, burning all of her records. Nitsuki is too terrified to protest, and Necrolord says he will write his own history, and there was no need for a pesky little chronicler. He raises the Necrostaff, and Nitsuki is devoured by the undead, killing the young chronicler. Everyone is shocked. Even the other necromancers are stunned at Zahn's actions. But Necrolord doesn't care about an old international law. He ignores everyone's concern and orders his men to send her body back to Northwind as a warning, should they choose to intervene again. The Nether arrives to conquer Felden not long after, and Zahn is prepared for Pythos' arrival. He presents the undead dragon in all its might, and this impresses the Nether King enough to create an alliance. They have common enemies, and with all the new necromancer abilities plus their plethora of diverse undead even the Nether can't control, there is zero incentive for Pythos to oppose them. Yet. Zarya severely objects to the alliance with the Nether, and he feels betrayed. The Necrolord promised them glory and allowed Zarya to take out his anger on the Nether by abusing their relics, and now Necrolord was going against everything he and Zarya originally stood for. The moment Pythos and Zahn shake hands, Zarya voices his concerns. Necrolord would have killed him for such disrespect in front of their new ally if he wasn't the second strongest necromancer alive. Zarya leaves, bowing slightly, but is left extremely frustrated and disgusted by the choice his idol made. The sole reason Necrolord allowed Zarya to go on that wild goose chase with Nika was so he could prepare for the Nether's invasion without Zarya's objections. Being a Voltaris, and a smart one at that, despite leaving the clan, he knew DeathSinger was bound to return, and he would likely ally with the Nether again. He knew Zarya hates the Nether more than anything, so Zahn utilized this opportunity to distract him from his ulterior motive of eventually joining forces with the Nether and using the undead dragon as his ace. The Second Great War spreads not just throughout Felden, but all of Ardonia, as the Nether, Necromancers, and Voltaris teamed up. The Necromancers have a strong grasp over Felden, and the undead dragon is chained away, but always ready to be used if the threat of rebellion arose. Lucan and Nika are slowly overcoming their personal issues and have to learn to depend on one another if they're going to survive and take down the enemy. Nika is learning to let down the walls she's built since her last relationship, and Lucan has been trying to better himself after being a dirty thief and a player. He can't be aimless like he was in the beginning of Season 1, for Nika's sake, and now for all of Felden. Lucan and Nika organize a small resistance against the enemies, staying under the radar for as long as possible, until spies and allies from outside the kingdom are able to help. Between seasons, Lucan and Nika's resistance has grown to around 30 people, including some of Lucan's criminal friends from Season 2, and even Marcus. Lawbreakers and law enforcers united to fight a greater evil. They also recruited Eddie, who allegedly commanded a snowman army, but it's hard to take a guy whose only character trait is being drunk seriously. This small group is using their knowledge as locals to cause problems for the enemy, using little-known shortcuts, hidden run tactics, and guerrilla warfare to keep them busy. Through the three-way villain alliance, there's an opportunity for a very interesting character dynamic: the Necrolord and the Death Singer. One chooses the dead over his own people, while the other would die to protect them. Ingressus knew Zahn was Voltaris when they first met, thanks to a sort of sixth sense from Voltar to identify clan members. Ingressus actually respects Zahn for his intelligence and creating an entire faction out of nothing. However, another part of him disapproves of him defecting from the clan and forsaking songs in favor of dark magic. While Season 2 was the peak of Necrolord's power, it also cost him the ability to use songs as a whole. Wielding songs is special to the Ardoni, and Zahn chose necromancy instead. Black magic has a great effect on its practitioners. It darkens Zahn's eyes and markings to a permanent dull grayish-red color, as the lights they emit also dim further when he uses necromancy, the opposite of what songs do to Ardoni when wielded. He's hardly able to wield songs by Season 2, and completely unable by Season 3. Zahn still keeps his songs, forever bonded, yet permanently severed from their power, thanks to his extensive use of other magics beyond songs, abandoning his identity as an Ardoni. Ingressus shows some sympathy for the Necrolord, and asks him why he hides his face and tells him he can take off his mask for once. The Nether has been keeping close watch over the Necromancers, mainly through Pythus' right-hand Natharan, Scorch, local dictator of Felden, #1 Felina hater, and now the Necrolord's babysitter. Doesn't matter what we call this douchebag. The Necrolord and Scorch have a rivalry of sorts, as Necrolord is extremely paranoid that Pythus' right hand was sent to Felden only to monitor him like a child, and Scorch himself doesn't respect nor trust Necrolord at all. Tensions are high between the Nether and Necromancers, and Zarya only fans the flame from the darkness. He was the one Necromancer who never forgot what Necrolord promised them, and has grown to loathe his so-called idol. He wanted to destroy both Necrolord and the Nether, so he's secretly been a spy for the Tidesinger, feeding him information anonymously and planting some of the seeds of Tidesinger's plan into the Necromancer's ranks. Although Zarya never revealed his double-crossing to anyone, the Tidesinger would have inevitably found out, since he's very cautious and has Gallius' vast network on his side. Zarya is one of the Tidesinger's greatest assets, yet no one knows this besides himself, Tidesinger, Herobrine, and the audience. In the Fallora front of the Battle of Two Beacons, Necrolord unexpectedly arrives atop the undead dragon along with Scorch, returning just in time from Crown Peak to join the fight. The three new combatants fight and capture Saxon, Trevor, and their dragons, and Zahn watches them get dragged through a portal by Scorch and the undead dragon. The Tidesinger shows up again after finishing off the reinforcements from the beacon warp, and tries to save the knights, but Zahn intercepts him and they have their small duel before the rebels are forced to retreat. Unlike the Tidesinger, he can't use his songs, yet he still feels the adverse effects from them, weakening him. And Zahn's already deteriorating mind is put into an even worse state after the Tidesinger makes him question the Nether's loyalty. Everything is starting to get to him. The adverse effects of his unusable songs and his overuse of necromancy, Zarya's lurking around, Scorch's attitude, the growing resistance, and now the Tidesinger's comment. Two members of the Knights of Ardonia join the Felden arc, Zulius and Masani. They get acquainted with the Felden resistance, and Zulius, Lucan, and Nika recruit Alec. He was traumatized after watching the death of the man he respected the most, Kiyoshi, at the hands of the Necrolord. Since the Villain Alliance took over, he's been with the last remnants of the Felden army at the Luma Watchtower, and acts as their leader. They're limited to helping rescue civilians and refugees, only engaging the enemy in small skirmishes when necessary. Lucan and Nika's resistance has been far more offensive despite Alec having more military capability. After some back and forth, Zulius helps convince Alec and his army to fight with them. While they're off recruiting what's left of the military, Masani finds Lyra helping out the rebels. Since there's no better time to tell Masani's backstory, we're gonna go over it now because she joins the Felden arc. She and Lyra were childhood friends. Masani struggled with poverty, and Lyra was in training to become a Felden council member. Masani was found by unyielding legionnaires where she was recruited. Her time in the Legion helped her become a fantastic archer and learn escape routes all over. However, she was also gaslit and abused by the Legion, threatened in all sorts of horrible ways if she tried to leave. And one day, she and some other Legionnaires went to rob a vault in Felden. The high-ranking leader of this small division was a ruthless Felina male who was one of Masani's abusers. And during this heist, they're all caught and arrested by law enforcement officers. The leader blames Masani for everything during their time in prison, and all the other Legionnaires start fights with her. Eventually, the leader plans a breakout, and all the others in his division join him. All except Masani. She took the time to reflect, and she never spoke once. Some prisoners even believed she was nonverbal. Once her sentence was over, Masani would have been hanged for her crimes against Felden, if it weren't for Lyra. She was a high enough council member to stop the death sentence, and bargained to have Masani exiled instead. Their last interaction was Lyra asking Masani how she succumbed to a life like this, and Masani turned away. She had nothing, and wandered aimlessly until Hubris found her in Etheria, while he and Grek accompanied Rhea to enchant her spear. Hubris bought Masani a new bow, a rare, genuine act of kindness from someone other than her best friend. Masani became the 4th official member of the Knights of Ardonia. So when Masani is finally back in Felden and sees Lyra, she is shocked and extraordinarily happy, and so is Lyra. They finally reunite as friends after everything Masani has been through. After the Felden rebels hear of the Tidesinger's death, Lucan helps Zulius figure out the Tidesinger's puzzle, his convoluted plan using spies, like Zarya, to lay the seeds for the Necromancers to betray the Nether. Necrolord's broken mind has finally snapped, and he prepares his faction to strike against the Nether in fear of them doing the same first. A few moments before the liberation of Falora, Necrolord is about to unchain the undead dragon. Zarya interrupts though, and says he will free the dragon himself since the Necromancers have already taken position to attack, and any delay will cause the Nether to catch on. In his delirium, he trusts Zarya, so he gives him the key and runs off. Zarya, of course, never does unchain the dragon, and runs away, throwing the key aside. During the battle, Necrolord searches desperately to find and kill Scorch, but he's nowhere in Falora. Scorch fled the city when the fight started, tattletaling back to Pythis about the Necromancer's treachery. The Felden resistance jumps into the fight, taking advantage of the now 3-way battle. In the Necrolord's frantic search for Scorch, he instead comes across Masani and Zulius, and fights them. As Zarya watches that duel from afar, he knows his job is done and the Necromancers are doomed. But he has one final loose end to tie up. Lucan and Nika. He's a spy, yes, but he cares not for the two standing in front of him as he has a strong vendetta against the pair. In his fight against them, Zarya cuts off one of Nika's ears and suddenly blinds Lucan by slashing his eyes. Before you come at me saying that's a little graphic, just look at Star Wars Rebels. Maul blinds Kanan in a kids show, and it would be very similar to that scene, except it's in Minecraft. Zarya and Nika keep fighting until she disarms him, and he could have run away or used necromancy to continue on, but he just stands still and lets Nika stab him. Before his strength fully ebbs, he takes off his mask, smiles, and thanks Nika, dying happily in his own twisted way. At least satisfied he's causing them both a good amount of pain with their injuries before he dies. No one beyond the audience in Herobrine would ever know or learn of him being the double agent who helped everything fall into place, and Zarya died as an unsung anti-hero of sorts. It's also symbolic in a way. Zarya thought Necrolord liberated him from slavery in the Nether, but that wasn't true. He was then a slave to Zahn and to the Necromancers, under the guise of independence and glory. Zarya was never free. He was practically born enslaved, but he didn't want to die a slave. He may have died truly fighting for no side, for no righteous cause, but at least he died free. In Zulius, Masani, and the Necrolord's fight, Masani is killed, but Zulius defeats the Necrolord on Falora's canopy. The Necrolord, unlike Zarya, is a coward, and actually does use a Wither Skull to distract Zulius and escapes with a dirty trick. He runs through the tunnels where the undead dragon was chained and was supposed to be freed. Zahn finds the key on the ground and the dragon still chained, realizing Zarya betrayed him. He hardly has any strength left to fight, so he unchains Ripper and flies to Crown Peak to explain what happened to Pythis, hoping to save his own skin while all the other Necromancers are killed. Unfortunately for the Necrolord, Scorch already informed Pythis of his betrayal, and Pythis mocked Zahn in his final moments by claiming his precious undead dragon, taking his Necrostaff, and throwing the Necrolord himself into a pit full of undead and leaving him there to die. In Falora, the rebels have won against both the Necromancers and the Nether, and Zulius and Alec lead the remaining civilians and armies to take back the entire kingdom. However, Alec still dies, only this time it happens a bit later, during the final battle of the series at Crown Peak. Alec falls at the hands of Scorch, keeping his original cause of death. All that changed is the time it happens. Lyra is also killed in this battle, as she went to honor Masani and continue fighting for her. Lyra is the one who ignites the city beacon as she's shot down by skeletons, ironically enough dying the same death as the original Masani. At Crown Peak, Scorch also finds his end, courtesy of Grek. Lucan and Nika stayed in Felden to recover from their injuries while the Knights of Ardonia won the Second Great War. The two of them started the chain of events that led to Felden's liberation, inspiring the whole kingdom to fight for freedom. Throughout Season 3, they slowly became closer together despite the occasional quarrel, relying on one another especially in their final fight. They've both developed a ton from when we first met them in Season 1. Lucan really did become a hero fighting for a greater cause rather than a selfish street rat. And Nika finally completed her goal of eradicating the necromancers and is no longer a lonely castaway. Lucan stays with Nika despite his blindness, and it's symbolic because unlike other Felinas he chased in the past, he learned to love Nika for who she is, not her outward appearance. The arc ends with them at the top of their new home, leaning on each other, as the sun rises over the jungles of Felden, at last concluding the story of these two outcasts we've come to love. This video is quite a bit shorter than the other rewrites, and it's mostly because we've covered a lot of the Felden arc in the last two videos, and our rewrite team is a little less interested in this arc than the others, if I'm being 100% honest. Despite that, we did our best to fix the biggest problems here and change the worst parts from the script to hopefully more on par with everything else we've rewritten. We cut Dark Nika entirely because her being indoctrinated added nothing to the plot and had no impact on any of the characters. I do think Dark Nika could work if done right. We just strayed away from that concept entirely because it doesn't quite fit with Necrolord's undead dragon plan. If he's obsessed with the dragon, there's no reason for him to go out of his way to indoctrinate a random girl. Lucan and Nika's relationship also had potential in the script. However, it turned out super generic and uninspired. Other members of the community have great ideas for improving their dynamic, and if this rewrite was ever scripted for real, I would definitely implement more small, memorable bits in their dialogue. I also didn't discuss Kiyoshi much since he really doesn't need a rewrite, and all his conflicts from the original script are pretty much the same here. Necrolord, on the other hand, did need changes to be just as good of a villain as the others. The Necromancers allying with the Nether plus the addition of the Undead Dragon makes him just as cool and terrifying as the other villains. To me, the Felden stuff seems like it should be grittier than the other arcs, and that's part of what separates it from the Ardonia and Ender stuff. While the Ardonia and Ender Knights have themes mostly regarding morality, leadership, and the corruption of power, the Felden arc has themes that are less romantic, might be the best way to phrase it. Of course, these big, legendary heroes from the other plots discuss ideas that are generally associated with epic fantasy, but Felden is different. These guys are dealing with themes like slavery, alienation, masking, desperation, poverty, being outcasted from society, and politics within their world. Their arc is the most grounded of the three main ones. The protagonists have no magic of their own, and they're just regular people fighting a constant uphill battle. Felden is largely separate from the other plotlines. While new additions like Zulius joining the arc help connect it more, there are still enough major tonal and thematic differences to keep Felden somewhat of its own thing, like the original creators intended. Thanks so much for sticking around and watching, and don't you worry, we're not done rewriting just yet. There's 3 more shorter rewrite videos covering everything and everyone we haven't discussed yet, so hopefully more cool stuff coming soon. Thanks again to the renderers and Alex and Scribbled as always. Y'all are the best. And one more thing before you click off, we have more awesome rewrite-inspired fan arts and renders to show you. Alright, see you in the next one, and thank you for watching.